In this video, I'm going to share with you the silent killer of chronic fatigue syndrome recovery and 3 things you can actually do about it so you can get in the driver's seat of your recovery and ultimately get healthy and start living again. This one is not talked about. And the number one silent killer that I have seen with literally thousands and thousands of people over the last 15 years is overwhelm. And let me explain to you why this is the silent killer of recovery from chronic fatigue syndrome. Number one, I need to state that this is super normal to feel overwhelmed, to not know what's going on. And it's not your fault because ultimately the medical system has let you down, right? When you get sick, you kind of just assume when we grow up that you go to the doctor, you get the pill, you get the thing that they prescribe, you take it, and then you get better. And you have probably tried that with chronic fatigue syndrome, and you have probably felt like you have failed over and over and over again. And this is because, again, no pill or one thing will fix chronic fatigue syndrome, right? If you think about it, chronic fatigue syndrome affects every single area of your health and your life. And so, in order for recovery to happen, we need to have a multifaceted approach that covers every area of your health and life. Here's why overwhelm is the silent killer that you might not realize it is. If you think about it, whenever you get overwhelmed, what's going on here is there's a connection between your brain and your body. And when you get overwhelmed in your recovery, because things are going to come up, you're highly sensitive, you're highly irritable if you haven't slept well. This is the funny thing about chronic fatigue syndrome that's not that funny. People on the outside think that you are someone who just sleeps all the time and, oh, what a luxury, you just get to sleep all the time, that must be nice. The truth is, half the time you have disturbed sleep patterns. If you've got chronic fatigue syndrome, you're either sleeping a hell of a lot or sleeping a hell of a little. You can't even get into a good circadian rhythm. And so what happens when these disturbances happen, or when this stress happens, or stress gets thrown at you and your brain and body is already under an immense amount of stress already? Overwhelm simply just amplifies the nervous system to say, this isn't okay, something is wrong, I need to overprotect you. And what happens here is all the energy that is utilized gets utilized in the wrong way. So if you think about it, we have, let's say we've got 10 energy credits per day, right? And a situation or a circumstance arises in that day, you're already not feeling that great, you haven't slept well, and then all of a sudden there's more stress thrown at you. Now, already it takes energy to get through the day, but you add in this overwhelm to the stressor, and all of a sudden you're in the energy deficit credit period, right? So you've taken the 10 credits away because of daily life, and the stress and the pressure has actually put you in an energy deficit. And you're wondering why you can't get enough consistency to build your capacity to have more strength and resilience to deal with stress better. So I'm going to give you 3 ways on how to improve this and for it to not be a problem over time, because what happens as you start to get healthy and start to live again, and we've seen this thousands of times, is as you get healthier and stronger, your brain and your body get better at adapting to stimulus. And stimulus is just simply stress. And stress isn't perceived as good or bad, it just is what it is. So we can have good stress where we put our muscles under tension, and as long as it's appropriate, we will have a good response from that, and we will get and become stronger for it. But if we give our brain and our bodies the wrong stimulus, and the brain and the body can't adapt to that appropriately, what happens is the brain shuts down, it goes into overwhelm, and this is where your nervous system fires up, and this is where your symptoms get worse and worse and worse. And this is why it is so important to have a clear pathway. But you might not be aware that the overwhelm is the thing that's actually in the way. How we're dealing with overwhelm, how we're responding to overwhelm is very important. And so number one, we want to get clear on what is going on with you, right? Half the battle is actually going around in circles, not knowing what the hell is wrong with you. And that can be super hard. It can be hard to deal with when you're like, do I have chronic fatigue syndrome? Do I have adrenal fatigue? Do I have, it can get to the point where you start to think, maybe I've got cancer, or maybe, I'm dying. I remember when I went through this almost over 2 decades ago, I felt like that, right? I remember going to my mum and dad like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but this doesn't feel okay. And it's normal if you're feeling that way, but we do want to get clear on, you know, have we excluded any other illness or ailment from the medical system so we can have a clear idea of what's actually going on. Now, your diagnosis doesn't have to be your end destination. It's just to help you not have to focus on it anymore, okay? So I do recommend, if you can, to find a doctor who can diagnose you with chronic fatigue syndrome if that's what you're going through. And if it's not and you find something else, then that's also good information too. So number one, we want to get clear. And I tell you why we want to get clear, because I'm going to show you this here on my whiteboard. Clarity creates confidence. And on the most simplest foundation, we want to get clarity on what the hell is going on so it can create a little bit more confidence on the pathway that we are on, all right? That's number one. And you might be thinking, well, Toby, that's not that helpful because once I got a diagnosis, I don't have a plan. And this is why I started doing this work, because when I went through it, there was zero plan. And it was my responsibility as I got better that I felt that I made sure that I have to make sure that no one else had to go through what I did alone, and everyone needs practical steps with their recovery. All right, that makes sense. So what do I do next? So I've got the diagnosis, I'm a little bit clearer. I don't have to worry, right, the overwhelm of what it might be or what it might not be. The second thing we want to do then is start to have a holistic approach. And here's the key and the kicker. You don't want to come from a place of overwhelm. Dr. Lionel Lubitz, one of Australia's famous doctors for ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, said, it's not what you do, but it's how you do it. And it is just so true. So I want you to be mindful of not what you're doing, but how you're doing it. You probably have noticed before when you go see when you get on Dr. Google, right? You're searching, or you're going to a doctor, you're going to a naturopath, you're going to whoever recommended you, you're buying all the supplements and the pills and all these things, and there's a sense of urgency and a desperation. I need this to work. I hope this works. Please, God, please, for the love of me, make this work. And we're stressed. Remember the 10 credit rule. All of a sudden, just from the way that we are approaching this response is actually affecting our energy levels, and it's depleting energy faster than it would if we took a calm, relaxed approach. And so I want you to be mindful of, it's not necessarily what you do, but it's how you do it. And what this is going to do is help your nervous system appropriately regulate to the stimulus that you're giving it on any given day. And it's not what we do, it's how we do it. So we want to come from a calm, relaxed approach. If we're coming from a place of desperation, it doesn't create anything good. You think about anything that you've done in your life that you've come from a desperate place, particularly around things, people, and relationships. Has anything ever really great come from this? Usually not. So we want to factor that in, right? What's conducive of health? That's how we want to think about this. Even if you're trying to eat a really healthy diet, but it's really strict and you're very, very strict on it, and I can't eat a minute later than 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. and all these times, and I must eat this certain amount of food and it must be perfect, and if it's not, oh my God, there's going to be a big problem. Already the stress of that thing is actually worse than the thing itself that you're trying to do. You might be better off eating less healthy but being more relaxed about it, and you'll actually have more energy, because remember, you only have a set amount of energy credits per day. And if you're coming from a stressed place, even if it's for perceived healthy things, you will end up with less energy than you did otherwise. Hopefully this is landing for you, right? Again, we want to think about energy from a broad view, not just I'm sick, I need energy. It's like your brain and body is dying for energy. It's asking for love. It's asking for you to look after it. It's asking for you to nurture it, right? And that brings me to my third point, which is it's the nature in which we deal with stress, right? And I'll give you a couple of key tips here around this. But if you look outside this window, there's a bunch of trees. And if you see today, there's the wind's blowing a little bit, you can kind of see the trees ruffling a little bit. Now here's the crazy thing, right? There's seasons. These trees, in the last week, it's had storms, it's had sunshine, it's had wind, it's had no wind, it's had rain. Do you think the trees stress out about the weather to the degree which they get so stressed out about it that it actually kills them? It lowers their nutrients so much that it stresses the tree out and it dies, right? No. They respond to nature and the seasons appropriately based off the situation and circumstances. And you as a human being can emanate what nature is doing outside. I know it sounds a little bit woo-woo and philosophical. Stay with me here because I'm going to give you some practical tips. So it's, again, how we respond to the stimulus. It's okay if you get a cold or a flu. In fact, you're a human being. And so this is something that we deal with our clients when they get a cold or a flu. It's something that we tell them to back off and maintain their baseline rather than try and push and progress, okay? We never want you to progress when your body and brain is in jeopardy of a simple, natural cold or flu like every single human being goes through, right? Now, there's two options that we can take here. When you get a cold and flu, you either freak out and go, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. Oh my God, this is terrible. It's ruined my life. What if it doesn't go away? And oh my God, what do I do? I don't know how much to do. Should I do this? Already, again, you've already got less energy reserve already in the credits every day because you've got a cold or a flu. But all of a sudden, you've just depleted more. What we need to turn up is the opposite. We need to respond to the cold and flu and go, oh, well, I've got a cold and flu. I better look after myself. This is a sign that I really need to have some more energy in activities versus energy out activities and build that up appropriately. And so you can see the two different responses. One will actually encompass more energy and the other one will deplete energy. And we want to be aware of that. Okay, so it's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's how you respond that matters the most. And then thirdly, my last tip from a practical mindset point of view is, if you're constantly looking for a quick fix, you're telling your brain and your body that there is a major problem that needs to go away today. Now that sense of urgency is stressful. If you're treating your recovery like an emergency recovery session that you're saving someone from a cliff face, chances are it's not that conducive of healing. So the question that I want you to answer is, what is conducive of healing? Because if we put your brain and body in the right environment and do the right appropriate things at the right time with the right amount of stimulus, your brain and body is going to adapt amazingly, appropriately, so you can start to get healthy and start living again. Look at this wonderful plant. Healthy, thriving, amazing environment. It's got all it needs. It's got the light, it gets water, it gets lots of natural light, and it gets well looked after, and all of a sudden it's thriving. Now what happens if we stop doing the right things for that plant? If we stop watering it, if we stop giving it sunlight, chances are it's going to go backwards. And this is what happens with most people in their recovery, and why they never get to full health and living again, is because they're not putting themselves in the right environment, and they're not doing the right things in the current environment and circumstances they're currently in the season of recovery. Now, of course, recovery is a lot more nuanced than that. There's a lot to it, right? It's not just as simple as giving you 3 tips, but these 3 tips can be a really helpful framework for you to approach your entire recovery different. Stop treating your recovery like an emergency SES, cliff-facing, saving situation. Take a breath. What would it be like if you could treat recovery like a process, like a rehabilitation process, just like a broken arm or a broken leg? There's a rehabilitation process. Recovery from chronic fatigue syndrome is no different. All you need to do is do the right things at the right time, just like you would do with a physical rehabilitation. We need to do with the brain and the body. And my biggest takeaway for you to progress your health and accelerate your health is stimulus, response, outcome. So a stimulus is going to come your way, whether it's you've chosen the stimulus, so you're doing restorative movement, you're doing cognitive work again, you're building up your physical capacity. That's choice-based growth, or if an outside situation or circumstance comes your way and it's an outside stimulus. It's a challenge that chose you, not that you chose it. And that's the stimulus. How you respond to that stimulus will create the outcome, the result. And so as you're going through life and stresses come up, it's really important to just stop in the moment and ask yourself, okay, stimulus, response, that's you. You're in charge of that part. Will help you create the result that you want or that you don't want. And if you can get in that driver's seat of your recovery and then you have the right frameworks to follow step by step, you are going to do incredibly well. Full stop. So I hope this video was helpful. Remember, clarity creates confidence. And I will tell you for a fact that as you have more clarity, as you have a calmer approach, more energy credits are going to be saved to be used in the appropriate fashion that it should be used for. And we call that a healthy, functioning human being. And so please take this video as your reminder to make sure you do the right things at the right time, to have the appropriate right response, and to play the long game. Because if we can stop treating every moment like it's an emergency, and we can start to treat it like a calm, relaxed approach, that we're moving towards something more important and meaningful to you, you're going to enjoy the process more, which again will give you more energy. Your nervous system will love you for it. But two, your brain and your body is going to adapt appropriately to that stimulus. And that's what we're doing. This is what we've been doing with thousands of people for the last 15 years. And this is why people get better through our work and our frameworks. The key is you need to apply it. Hope this video helps. We'll see you soon.